I thought I was paying for one night of control. No emotions. No consequences. No names that mattered. But I didn't know the man I let into my apartment wasn't just pretending to be ordinary. He was hiding an entire empire. 3 days later, I saw him again. Not in my bed, but at the head of a boardroom, surrounded by people who obeyed every word he said. That's when the messages started. Strangers watching me. Warnings disguised as favors. They didn't want him. They wanted me, because I was the only mistake he never planned for. I could have walked away. Instead, I stepped deeper, and by the time I realized the truth, I wasn't trying to escape anymore. I was deciding who would fall with me. I never imagined my life would reach a point where I would make a decision like that. I was standing alone in my apartment, the city glowing outside the window, loud and restless as always. The digital clock on my oven read 11:12 p.m. The kitchen light flickered briefly, then settled, as if even it was tired. I let out a long breath, realizing I'd been holding it in for most of the evening without noticing. Tonight wasn't supposed to feel heavy. I told myself this choice was logical. Temporary. Controlled. Just one night. One night where I wouldn't need to explain myself. One night without pretending I was fine. One night where I could be honest without consequences. My phone lay on the counter, screen already unlocked. The confirmation page was still there, glowing quietly. One booking. One evening. Clear boundaries. No emotional promises. No judgment. I read the details again, even though I already knew them by heart. What unsettled me wasn't fear. It was how calm I felt. This didn't come from impulse. It came from exhaustion. Earlier that day, I'd sat through another meeting where my ideas were politely ignored. I smiled through conversations where people assumed confidence meant contentment. I went home alone, like I always did, to an apartment that felt far too quiet for someone surrounded by people all day. This wasn't about desire. It was about control. For once, I wanted to choose something for myself without asking permission. My phone vibrated softly. He was on his way. The silence in the apartment suddenly felt louder. I walked into the bathroom and looked at my reflection. No dramatic makeup. No costume. Just clean hair, simple clothes, and a woman who wanted to be seen as she was, not as someone else's expectation. A knock sounded at the door. Not rushed. Not aggressive. Just firm enough to be polite. My heart beat once hard. I opened the door. The man standing there wasn't what I expected. He was tall, but not intimidating. His jacket was simple. His shoes clean but worn. There was no exaggerated confidence, no practiced charm. His eyes met mine calmly, without wandering, without judgment. "Good evening," he said. His voice was steady, warm. "I'm here for the booking." I stepped aside and let him in. He moved carefully, as if aware of the space he occupied. He took off his jacket and placed it neatly over a chair without being asked. That small, quiet gesture made me pause longer than I meant to. We stood there for a moment, neither of us rushing to fill the silence. "You can sit," I said finally, gesturing toward the couch. "Before anything else, we should talk." "Of course," he replied immediately, sitting where I indicated, hands resting openly on his knees. "Whatever you need." That response caught me off guard. I explained the rules. One night. No pressure. No expectations beyond conversation unless I chose otherwise. He listened without interrupting. "You can change your mind at any time," he said. "And if you'd rather just talk, that's completely fine with me." I looked at him then, really looked at him, and felt something shift. Not attraction. Not relief. Respect. Neither of us knew it yet, but this night, so carefully arranged to mean nothing, was already beginning to change everything. I poured 2 glasses of water, my hands steady, my thoughts quieter than they had been all day. "This part matters," I said softly, handing him a glass. "I want to be honest." He accepted it with both hands. "I'm listening." And without realizing it, I had already taken the first step into a story that would rewrite everything I thought I understood about power, trust, and being seen. At first, We talked about nothing important. The weather. The city. How loud everything felt lately. He didn't try to steer the conversation. He didn't ask personal questions too quickly, the way some people did when they thought intimacy was owed to them. Instead, he followed my pace, slow, deliberate, almost cautious. That made me uneasy. Most men arrived with expectations already formed. He arrived like he was observing. "What do you do?" he asked eventually. "I work in brand strategy," I said. "Mostly behind the scenes." He nodded, as if that told him more than I intended. "You're used to reading people," he said. "You notice what they don't say." I smiled faintly. "Is it that obvious?" "To someone who does the same thing," he replied. That was the first time I paused. We sat across from each other, the space between us comfortable but alert. I noticed how still he was. Not stiff, controlled. Like someone accustomed to being watched and choosing carefully what to reveal. "You don't seem nervous," I said. He considered the question. "I am," he answered. "I just don't let it decide how I behave." That honesty surprised me. I took a sip of water, buying myself a moment. "And you?" he asked. "Why tonight?" I hadn't planned to explain that part. "I got tired of being impressive," I said after a moment. "Tired of being capable. Tonight isn't about escape. It's about choosing something uncomplicated." His gaze didn't change, but I felt his attention sharpen. "Nothing involving people is uncomplicated," he said gently. "But I understand what you mean." There was something about the way he spoke, measured, thoughtful, that felt out of place. This wasn't the tone of someone chasing distraction. It was the tone of someone used to responsibility. I noticed his watch then. Classic design. No visible logo. Expensive but not loud. "You travel a lot?" I asked. "Yes," he said. "More than I'd like." "For work." "For decisions," he replied. That answer lingered in the air longer than it should have. As the conversation deepened, the boundaries didn't disappear, but they softened. We spoke about ambition. About loneliness that didn't come from lack of people, but from lack of understanding. He listened when I spoke. Really listened. And when I stopped mid-sentence once, unsure if I'd said too much, he didn't push. "You don't owe me clarity," he said. "Only honesty." That sentence stayed with me. At some point, I realized something unsettling. I wasn't performing. I wasn't trying to impress him or manage the situation. I was simply present. And that wasn't what I'd planned for this night. When the clock crept past midnight, neither of us commented on it. Time had become irrelevant in a way that made me uneasy and curious. "You know," I said quietly, "this isn't turning out the way I expected." A small smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. "It rarely does," he replied. "The important things never do." I leaned back against the couch, exhaling slowly. Whatever this was becoming, it wasn't transactional anymore. And without realizing it, I was no longer counting the hours. I was wondering what would happen if this night didn't end the way I intended. The shift happened quietly. There was no dramatic moment. No sudden touch. No line crossed too fast. It was the details. He stood when I stood. Lowered his voice when mine did. Not once did he check his phone, not even when it vibrated softly against the table. Most people couldn't resist that reflex. "Do you mind if I ask something?" I said. "Ask," he replied immediately. "You don't act like this is work." He smiled faintly, as if he'd expected the question. "It isn't," he said. "Not tonight." That answer unsettled me more than any rehearsed charm would have. I noticed how carefully he chose his words. When he spoke about success, he never used numbers. When he mentioned stress, he never blamed anyone else. And when I joked about rich men buying freedom, he didn't laugh. "Money doesn't buy freedom," he said. "It buys leverage." "Those aren't the same." I studied his face. "That sounds like experience," I said. "It is," he replied without hesitation. At one point, I excused myself to the kitchen. I needed space, to think, to breathe, to recalibrate. As I poured another glass of water, I glanced back at the living room. He was standing by the window, looking out over the city like it belonged to him, not in ownership, but in responsibility. Like someone aware that decisions made up high eventually fell on people far below. That was when a strange thought crossed my mind. This man wasn't pretending to be important. He was pretending to be ordinary. When I returned, he turned immediately, as if he'd sensed me. "You're quiet," he said. "So are you," I replied. "I'm listening," he corrected. The conversation drifted again, this time toward trust. "What's the one thing people misunderstand about you?" he asked. I hesitated. "That I'm confident," I said. "When really, I'm just prepared." He nodded slowly. "Preparation looks like confidence to people who don't do the work." I felt seen in a way that made my chest tighten. "And you?" I asked. He didn't answer right away. "That I'm distant," he said finally. "When really, I'm careful." "About what?" "About who gets close enough to be affected by my choices." That answer landed heavier than I expected. The room felt smaller after that. Not because of tension, but because of awareness. I realized I hadn't asked his name. "You never told me what to call you," I said. A pause. "Daniel," he said. "That's fine for tonight." For tonight. The way he said it suggested there were other names. Other contexts. Other versions of himself that didn't belong here. I didn't press. He stood, moving a little closer, not invading my space, just enough to acknowledge it. "If at any point this feels wrong," he said quietly, "say so." I searched his face for expectation. There was none. That was the most dangerous part. I had planned this night to be simple, predictable, contained. Instead, I found myself sitting across from a man whose calm felt earned, whose restraint felt practiced, and whose presence made me question whether I was the one in control after all. And somewhere between the city lights and the quiet space between our words, I understood something I hadn't expected to admit. This wasn't just one night anymore. It was the beginning of a truth I wasn't ready to uncover. It was past 1 in the morning when I noticed the first crack. Not in him. In the story he was telling me. We were sitting closer now, not touching, just sharing the same quiet space. The city outside had slowed, lights blinking lazily like it had nothing left to prove. "You said you travel for decisions," I said, circling back to something he'd mentioned earlier. "What kind of decisions?" He didn't flinch. "The kind that affect more people than you ever meet," he replied. That answer should have been vague enough to end the conversation. Instead, it sharpened it. I asked about his work again, phrasing it differently this time. "What happens if you make the wrong call?" His jaw tightened, not visibly, but enough that I noticed. "Then someone pays for it," he said. "Sometimes it's me. Sometimes it's people who didn't agree to be involved." That wasn't a hypothetical. That was experience. I leaned back slightly, studying him. "You don't talk like someone who clocks out," I said. "No," he agreed. "I don't." The second crack came when his phone rang. Not a ringtone. A silent vibration. He glanced at the screen, and for just a fraction of a second, the calm slipped. Concern replaced it. Focus. Urgency. He turned the phone face down immediately. "I'm sorry," he said. "I need a moment." He stepped into the hallway, closing the door behind him. I hadn't planned to listen. But voices carry in small apartments. His tone was low, controlled, but unmistakably authoritative. "No. That's not acceptable. Yes, I understand the consequences. Handle it before morning." He ended the call quickly and returned, his expression already neutral again. But the atmosphere had changed. "I hope that wasn't work," I said lightly. "It was," he replied. "Unfortunately, you don't seem like someone who gets emergencies at 1 a.m. unless you're important." A pause. "Or unless I'm responsible," he corrected. That word again. Responsible. I stood and walked toward the kitchen, needing movement. "You know," I said over my shoulder, "people usually exaggerate when they want to impress." "I'm doing the opposite," he said quietly. "And you're noticing anyway." I turned. "So you were hiding something?" He met my eyes. "Yes." The honesty in that single word sent a chill through me. But not from you, he added. From the expectations that come with it. Silence stretched between us. Not awkward. Waited. I didn't plan for this night to be complicated, I admitted. Neither did I, he said. But complications usually mean something matters. I didn't like how easily that made sense. When he finally stood to leave, it felt too sudden. He put on his jacket slowly, deliberately, like someone aware that timing mattered. This doesn't have to end here, he said. But it shouldn't continue without clarity. Clarity about what? I asked. About who I am, he replied. And what that would mean for you. I walked him to the door, my thoughts louder than my heartbeat. Before opening it, I asked the question I'd been avoiding all night. Is Daniel your real name? He smiled, not evasive, not amused. It's one of them, he said. Then he added, softly, if we see each other again, you'll deserve the real one. The door closed behind him. I stood there long after, my apartment suddenly too quiet, replaying every word, every pause. I had booked one night to feel in control. Instead, I had met a man whose life operated on levels I couldn't see, and I knew, with unsettling certainty, that this story wasn't finished. I didn't expect to see him again so soon. In fact, I told myself I wouldn't. That night was supposed to stay contained, folded neatly into memory, labeled temporary and left alone. I went back to my routine, my meetings, my deadlines. I told myself that whatever curiosity lingered would fade with time. It didn't. 3 days later, I was running late for work. The lobby of the Northbridge Center was already crowded when I arrived. Glass walls, polished floors, people moving with purpose. I adjusted my bag on my shoulder and scanned the directory, mentally rehearsing what I needed to say in the meeting upstairs. That was when I heard his voice. Calm. Familiar. Impossible to mistake. Let's move this to Thursday. I want revised projections by then. I stopped walking. He was standing near the elevators, suit tailored, posture confident, surrounded by people who were clearly waiting for him to finish speaking before they dared to move. This wasn't Daniel. This was someone else entirely. Someone in control. He turned. Our eyes met. For a fraction of a second. Something flickered across his face. Recognition, surprise, restraint, all gone before anyone else could notice. Good morning, he said professionally. Distant. Polite. As if we were strangers. My chest tightened. Good morning, I replied, matching his tone. No one around us suspected anything. To them, this was just another executive crossing paths with another employee. But I knew better. The meeting that followed was a blur. I couldn't focus. Every word felt delayed, like my thoughts were always half a step behind reality. Halfway through, my phone buzzed. A single message. We should talk. Not here. No name. No explanation. Just certainty. After the meeting, I found him waiting near a quiet corridor overlooking the city. You didn't say this is where you worked, I said, keeping my voice low. You didn't ask, he replied. That wasn't an accident. No, he agreed. It wasn't. I crossed my arms. So Daniel is a lie. It's a version, he said. One I don't usually get to be. I searched his face. And the rest. He hesitated, for the first time since I'd met him. My name is Adrian Cole, he said finally. I'm the CEO of Cole Vanguard Holdings. There it was. The truth I'd been circling without touching. I laughed softly, more from disbelief than humor. So that night, I said, you weren't just pretending? I wasn't pretending with you, he replied. I was hiding from everything else. That's worse, I said. I know. We stood in silence, the city stretching beneath us. You understand why this complicates things, he said. Yes, I replied. Because now nothing about that night feels accidental. He met my gaze steadily. It wasn't, he said. But it was honest. That didn't make it easier. As we parted ways, he said one last thing. I won't cross into your life without permission, he said. But I won't pretend I don't want to. I watched him walk away, surrounded again by people, power, and expectations. And I realized something that made my stomach drop. That night hadn't been an escape from reality. It had been the moment my reality quietly changed direction. After that day, things stopped feeling coincidental. At first, it was subtle. An unexpected calendar invite copied to the wrong thread. A project reassigned without explanation. A colleague asking casually how well I knew Adrian Cole. Too casually. I told myself I was imagining it. But I wasn't. Adrian didn't reach out immediately. When he did, it wasn't personal. Can we talk? Somewhere neutral. No emojis. No warmth. Just caution. We met at a quiet cafe across town, the kind of place people used when they didn't want to be recognized. He arrived early, dressed down, but the way the barista straightened when he ordered told me everything. Power followed him, even when he tried to shed it. "You shouldn't be here," I said as I sat down. "Not with me." "I know," he replied. "That's why I asked." I studied his face. "This isn't about us anymore, is it?" He didn't answer right away. "People noticed," he said finally. "Not what happened." That something changed. My stomach tightened. "In my world," he continued, "attention is a currency. When it shifts unexpectedly, people investigate." "And I'm the anomaly," I said. "You're the variable," he corrected. "Those are always questioned first." I laughed under my breath. "I didn't ask to be involved in your world." "No," he said quietly. "But I let you step close to it." That was the first time he sounded like he regretted something. The pressure escalated faster than I expected. A compliance officer requested a meeting. A background check was suddenly standard procedure. My inbox filled with polite questions that carried sharp edges. "You should distance yourself," Adrian said during one late call. "For now." "And what does that look like?" I asked. "It looks like pretending that night never happened." I closed my eyes. "I don't know how to do that." "Neither do I," he admitted. What scared me wasn't his power. It was how many people wanted access to it. And how easily I could become leverage. One evening, as I left work, a black car idled at the curb longer than necessary. No one got out. No one waved. It drove away slowly once I noticed it. That night, I didn't sleep. When Adrian showed up at my apartment unannounced 2 days later, I knew things had crossed another line. "I'm not here to convince you of anything," he said as soon as I opened the door. "I'm here to give you a choice." I folded my arms. "Those are usually illusions. Not this one." He looked at me, not as a CEO, not as a man in control, but as someone weighing consequences. "You can walk away," he said. "Completely. I'll make sure your name never intersects with mine again." "And the other option?" "You stay visible," he said. "And we deal with what comes." I searched his face. "And if it gets worse?" "It will," he said honestly. "Before it gets better." I thought of the woman I'd been before that night. Careful. Prepared. Invisible when necessary. And I realized something unsettling. I didn't want to go back. "Then stop protecting me from the truth," I said. "If I'm going to be involved, I want to understand the risks." He nodded slowly. "Then the next conversation won't be safe," he said. "Or simple." I met his gaze. "Neither am I anymore." The first threat didn't sound like a threat. That's how I knew it was real. It came in the form of an email, polite, professionally worded, sent from an address I didn't recognize. The subject line read, "Quick clarification needed." No urgency. No emotion. Just confidence. The message thanked me for my recent collaboration and asked if I would be available for a brief conversation regarding overlapping interests. I stared at the screen longer than I should have. I hadn't collaborated with anyone. Adrian read it once and went very still. "This isn't random," he said. "They're testing." "Testing what?" I asked. "How close you are to me," he replied. "And how willing you are to talk." I felt something cold settle in my chest. "So what do I do?" "For now," he said. "Nothing." That answer didn't comfort me. The next sign was less subtle. At lunch the following day, a woman I'd never met approached my table. She was well-dressed, confident, The kind of person who didn't introduce herself unless she expected to be remembered. "You work in strategy, right?" she asked casually. Must be fascinating being so close to decision makers. I looked up. "I do my job," I said. "Like everyone else." She smiled. "Of course. I just admire people who know how to place themselves well." Then she walked away. She never asked my name. That evening, Adrian called. "They know," he said without preamble. "Know what?" "That you matter." I sat down slowly. "In their world," he continued, "people don't become visible by accident. When they do, it's usually because someone else made them that way." "You," I said. "Yes," he replied. "Me." The moment everything changed came 2 days later. I was leaving the office late, the building nearly empty, when I noticed the security gate hadn't opened automatically. I stepped back, confused. "Badge issue," a voice said behind me. I turned. A man stood a few feet away, mid-40s. Neutral expression, hands visible. He looked like he belonged anywhere. "I can help," he said. "I'm fine," I replied. "I'll call security." "There's no need," he said calmly. "This won't take long." I didn't like how certain he sounded. He didn't touch me. He didn't raise his voice. He simply said, "You should tell Adrian Cole to stop digging." My breath caught. "And if I don't?" I asked. He smiled slightly. "Then you'll continue to experience inconveniences," he said. "Delays. Attention. Curiosity." "What kind of attention?" "The kind that follows people who aren't protected." Then he stepped aside. The gate opened. Just like that. I didn't cry until I got home. Not because I was scared, but because I understood. I wasn't collateral damage. I was the message. When Adrian arrived later that night, I didn't wait for him to speak. "They talked to me," I said. His face hardened in a way I hadn't seen before. "Did they threaten you?" "They reminded me I exist," I said. "And that you're the reason." Silence fell between us. "I told you this would get worse," he said quietly. "Yes," I replied. "But you didn't tell me I'd become currency." He stepped closer, not touching me. "I will end this," he said. "If that's what you want." "And if I don't?" I asked. "Then we stop pretending this is something we can control," he said. "And we prepare." I looked at him, at the man who had once sat on my couch pretending to be ordinary. "This is the part where people disappear," I said. "No," he replied. "This is the part where people choose." I thought about walking away. About safety. About silence. About becoming invisible again. But something inside me refused. "Then tell me everything," I said. "No more fragments. No more protection." His eyes searched mine. "You won't like what you hear," he said. "I already don't," I replied. "But I'm still here." He nodded once. And in that moment, I crossed the final line. Not into danger, but into truth. I didn't tell Adrian what I was about to do. Not because I didn't trust him, but because if I did, he would stop me. Once you understand how power moves, you also understand this. The safest people are the ones who look predictable. And I had stopped being predictable the moment they noticed me. The message came 2 nights later. Unknown sender. Private number. We can talk. No intermediaries. I stared at the screen for a long time before replying. Where? The location they sent was deliberate, public enough to avoid suspicion, isolated enough to control the outcome. A parking structure near the river. Top level. After midnight. I didn't tell Adrian where I was going. Instead, I left him a note on the kitchen counter. "If I don't come back, you'll know why." The city felt different at that hour. Quieter. Sharper. Every sound carried further than it should have. They were already there when I arrived. 2 men this time. Different faces. Same confidence. "You came alone," one of them said. "That was the condition," I replied. He smiled slightly. "Good. That means you're serious." They didn't threaten me. They didn't need to. They talked about options. About how quickly things could settle if Adrian Cole stopped asking the wrong questions. About how unnecessary it would be for my name to continue appearing in conversations it didn't belong in. "You're closer to him than you realize," one of them said. "And that makes you useful." There it was. The word no one says unless they mean it. I reached into my bag and placed the folder on the hood of a nearby car. Inside were documents Adrian had shown me. Summaries, projections, partial timelines. Not everything. Just enough. "This is what I can give you," I said. "For now." They exchanged a look. "And the rest?" one asked. "Locked," I replied. "And not where you can reach it." That earned me their attention. They slid a phone toward me. "Send him a message," the other said. "Something clean. Something final." My fingers hovered over the screen. I typed slowly. "This has gone too far. I'm stepping away. Don't contact me again." I pressed send. The message landed like a weight in my chest. They nodded, satisfied. "You made the right choice," one of them said. I didn't answer. They let me walk away. That was the most dangerous part, because it meant they believed the performance. I didn't go home. I checked into a small hotel under a different name, the kind that didn't ask questions as long as the card cleared. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at my phone, waiting for Adrian's response. It came an hour later. Just 3 words. "I understand. Stay safe." I closed my eyes. He understood exactly what I was doing, which meant the next phase had already begun. Outside, sirens echoed faintly in the distance. Somewhere, decisions were being rushed. Lines were being crossed. And people who thought they were in control were starting to move too fast. I lay back, heart racing, fully aware of one truth I could no longer deny. I hadn't walked into danger by accident. I had chosen it. And if this worked, it would end everything. I knew it wouldn't stay quiet for long. People who believe they're losing control don't slow down. They rush. They make mistakes. By the second night at the hotel, I stopped unpacking my bag. I slept in my clothes. I kept the lights off. Every sound in the hallway felt intentional, every shadow outside the window too still. At 3:17 a.m., my phone buzzed. Unknown number. "You shouldn't have stayed." My breath caught. Before I could respond, the message disappeared. The next morning, the city felt sharper than usual. Too many eyes. Too many pauses. I changed routes twice before heading out, keeping my head down, pretending I was just another person with somewhere to be. Halfway down the block, a black sedan rolled past me. Slowly. Too slowly. It didn't stop. That was worse. I didn't call Adrian. That was part of the plan. If they were watching, I needed to look alone. But when I reached the subway entrance, my phone rang again, this time with a name. Adrian. I hesitated, then answered. "Don't turn around," he said immediately. "Keep walking." My heart slammed against my ribs. "They're closer than I expected," he continued. "And they're panicking." "I thought that was good," I whispered. "It is," he replied. "But panic makes people careless." I reached the platform just as a train roared past, drowning out everything. "Listen carefully," Adrian said. "When I tell you to move, you move. No questions." I swallowed. "Where are you?" "Close enough," he said. The moment came fast. A hand brushed too close behind me. Footsteps matched my pace. "Now," Adrian said. I ran. I didn't look back. I pushed through the crowd, heart pounding, barely hearing the shouts behind me. The train doors slid open just as I reached the edge of the platform. Strong hands grabbed my arm, and then pulled me sideways. Not toward them. Away. I stumbled into a familiar chest, the smell of rain and clean fabric grounding me instantly. "Adrian." "Go," he said, shoving me into the train as the doors closed. The last thing I saw before the train moved was his face, focused, controlled, and absolutely furious. I don't remember much after that. Just noise. Movement. A sharp pain blooming at the side of my head. Then darkness. I woke up to white light and steady beeping. Hospital. My mouth was dry. My body felt heavy, distant. Adrian was there, standing beside the bed, jacket gone, sleeves rolled up, eyes bloodshot. "You shouldn't have come," I murmured. "I wasn't given a choice," he replied. While I was unconscious, everything detonated. The partial information I'd handed over forced their timeline forward. They moved money too fast. Made calls they shouldn't have. Tried to erase things that had already been copied. Adrian released the rest. All of it. Once the evidence went public, the silence shattered. Investigations. Raids. Names appearing where they never expected to be seen. That night, Adrian sat beside me in the dim hospital room. "You did exactly what I thought you would," he said quietly. "And what was that?" I asked. "Change the game," he replied. "At your own risk." I turned my head to look at him. "Is it over?" He didn't answer right away. "The worst part is," he said finally, "but the truth is out now." As I closed my eyes again, exhaustion finally winning, I realized something with startling clarity. I hadn't survived because I was protected. I survived because I refused to disappear. And whatever came next would be faced in the open. The world didn't end the way I imagined. It slowed down instead. After the hospital, after the headlines faded into background noise, after the names that once carried weight were spoken only in past tense, there was a quiet I hadn't prepared for. Not peace. Space. The investigations moved faster than anyone expected. Too many people had been waiting for an excuse to act. Too many systems had been bent for too long. Once the pressure broke, everything followed. Adrian stepped down before anyone could demand it. Not as an admission of guilt. As a line drawn. "I won't lead something I no longer trust," he said during a brief statement. "And I won't pretend this didn't cost people more than they were told." That honesty surprised everyone. Including me. I left the city a week later. Not because I was running, but because I needed distance from the version of myself that had learned how fragile invisibility really was. I didn't change my name. I didn't hide. I just chose a quieter place to rebuild. Adrian didn't follow me. That mattered more than anything else. We spoke occasionally. Carefully. Like two people who understood what had been lost and what had been spared. One evening, months later, he visited. No security. No entourage. Just him. "You're different," he said as we walked along the water. "So are you," I replied. He told me he'd started something new. Smaller. Slower. Transparent. "Power doesn't disappear," he said. "It just changes hands." I wanted to know where mine was going. I believed him. Not because I trusted his position, but because I trusted the man who had once been willing to lose everything. When he asked me if there was room for us, I didn't answer immediately. Not because I was afraid, but because I was finally honest. "I won't disappear for anyone," I said. "Not again." He nodded. "I wouldn't want you to." That was the difference. Some stories end with victory. Others end with love. Mine ended with clarity. I had entered one night believing control meant distance. I left it knowing strength meant presence. I wasn't rescued. I wasn't protected. I wasn't owned. I chose. And for the first time in my life, that choice belonged entirely to me.